Hey everybody, it's your old forgetful buddy, Old Fart.
Big girls don't cry. Big girls don't cry. Yeah, I'm sitting on this bar stool talking like a damn fool guy. Is it any wonder I've got too much time on my hands? I'm just a poor soul in the unemployment line.
Let's get started, folks. As you all know by now, I had a very one-sided debate with the old man, Old Fart Rants, and I've already uploaded a response to him on my website that's a lot longer than what I'm going to go over here. I get more in-depth there, exposing his stupidity, his absolute lack of knowledge, and I'm going to have all the screenshots go by. What's funny is he blocked me, and then he came back to my channel a couple times, looking to do damage control because I was posting on other channels he was posting on, and posting where he made his errors, and that got him all worked up, so he came back to my channel a couple times. I finally told him, and all those screenshots will be up, I told the old man that if he came back to my channel one more time and I wasn't allowed to post on his, I would block him. He said that I wasn't blocked, and I've got a screenshot of that, trying to go back to his channel to respond, and I was still blocked, so then I just gave up. He's obviously playing games. So I banished the old fart. Let's go through this here. First, he made a comment, one of the dumbest comments. This is shortly after he claimed to be studying the Bible for 50 years. He said, I'm not going to quote it exactly. I can't remember exactly what he said, but basically he insinuated a half century, which is roughly 12 years longer than I've been alive. He asked me if I believed in unicorns. Now, there's the Hebrew word translated unicorn. It's Re'em, Strong's number 7214, used 9 times in the Old Testament. I've got them all. See the link underneath the video. Now, obviously, this idiot has studied the Bible for 50 years. Now, either he's lying about that, much like he's lying about owning a pool, which I think is really odd for a collectivist, supposedly someone who owns a pool. Being a collectivist, you know, most people don't have pools, but I assume it's maybe one of those kiddie pools. But when he sees the word unicorn, number one, he thinks the Bible was written in English because he's an idiot. And number two, he does not go back to the original Hebrew, which, you know, obviously if he thinks it was written in English, he wouldn't. But the 9 times this word is used in the Old Testament. In Job 39, there's some rhetorical question asked about this animal. Asked whether the unicorn ram will serve you. Will it plow your fields for you? Indicating these rhetorical questions, this is not a domesticatable animal. This wild animal, whatever it is, ultimately is differentiated from the bulls, rams, lambs, and goats in Isaiah 34, chapter 34, verses 6 and 7. So he did not, he thought it was literally, he was thinking of, you know, a horse with a one horn sticking out of its head. So you're telling me, I'm going to give you an award, 50 years of Bible study and learned nothing. You wasted 50 years of your life. Congratulations. Most people can't do that. In fact, some people don't even live that long. So that's quite a feat. So here he is thinking the Bible was written in English. It was not. He does not know. When he saw the word unicorn there, he had that horse in his head. This animal, if you look at the 9 times it's used in the Old Testament, this is where you study something in context, old man. I know this is difficult for you because you don't read books. You spend all your time online making dumb videos. But if you look at how that animal is described and used in the Old Testament, it is not domesticatable, and it is certainly not a horse with one horn sticking out of its head. So it's congratulations. I'm actually quite dumbfounded at your stupidity. That was quite a feat. Moving on. Horses can be domesticated. This unicorn talked about in the Old Testament cannot. So let's move on to another one. I asked him. Now the reason I asked him these couple questions about Pharaoh Amen Emmet and cleaning symbiosis was to figure out his ideology, but he discarded it. He didn't want to answer. He didn't want to get into a detailed debate. He likes short arguments, as do all his sycophants, his ADHD sycophants. They like short arguments. If it takes more than 3 or 4 minutes on something, actually that's probably too long, then by golly, they're just going to throw it out. So he told me I asked him about ancient literature. Was it redacted or not? Forget, there are different levels of redaction, whether it could be a scribe copying error, it could be an anachronism, it could be out and out blatant trying to hide something. So there's different varying degrees of that, and he wouldn't get into that either because he probably doesn't even know. But he said, ancient literature, I think it was probably redacted. I asked him, why do you believe that? He got angry. See, he doesn't want me to get to his ideology, and this is where I would expose him. Pharaoh Amen-Emet is credited with starting the 12th dynasty, but he was called son of someone, also indicating that he was not of royal blood. He also began the practice of co-regency, letting his son Senusert rule with him for the last 10 years of his reign. This was probably done to avoid the haggling and possible conflict that would crop up at the death of the current pharaoh. A text relaying the death of Amen-Emet and posthumously attributed to him tells us a story as if he had written it himself. And that's Alfred J. Horth, Archaeology in the Old Testament. I put all my references in there. I know you don't read these books, Old Fart, because it's over your head. This might make the passage in Deuteronomy 34 that reflects Moses' death seem not so far-fetched. I'm not saying that Moses wrote his own death narrative. What I am suggesting, it is not uncommon for this to be done at the conclusion of a revered man's life. So, using your reasoning, we could throw out Pharaoh Amen-Emet, his entire existence, because the passages chronicling his death and posthumously attributed to him, just like Moses in Deuteronomy 34, we can throw him out. Well, you wouldn't. And he tried to get out of it saying no one worships the pharaohs. I was going to substitute and become a pharaoh worshiper just for a short period of time, just to get an answer out of him, but he would have got mad and probably blocked me earlier. But the reason he was using that, he did not want me to get to his ideology. That's why he wouldn't answer. And he does not have any, trust me folks, he knows nothing in this area. He was stalling. So right there, he wouldn't have answered that question. That's what I was going to ask him about. But I doubt a serious historian would answer that question, and I would expose that he's going to have a bias against the Bible. He will not apply the same reasoning, the same strenuous, stupid, idiotic, contorted pretzel logic to Egyptian texts that he would apply to the Old Testament. So let's move on to another one. We talked about Josephus briefly. He thought he was going to get me on and going, do you think Josephus witnessed Jesus' life? He thought he was just on Wikipedia looking up when Josephus lived and thought he was going to have a zinger there. Here's what Josephus writes in Antiquities of the Jews 20.9.1, as cited in Whiston, the complete works of Josephus. Josephus writes, the high priest Ananus was of this disposition. He thought that he had now a proper opportunity to exercise authority. Ananus assembled the Sanhedrin of judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others. And when he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. End quote. So we have Josephus right there. This is not the Testimonium Flavianum. Keep in mind, for those of you who know what that is. This is a very clear allusion to Jesus himself. And it occurred about AD 62, Jesus' brother James being murdered at the hands of the Sanhedrin. Well, here's the... so we got proof right there. And he would probably reject it, saying Josephus was not a Christian. We'll get into that real quick. Josephus was no Christian apologist. Here's the hotly disputed Testimonium Flavianum. And I'm going to read it with the interpolations. Now there was about this time Jesus, a wise man, if it be lawful to call him a man. For he was a doer of wonderful works, a teacher of such men as received the truth with pleasure. He drew over to him both many of the Jews and many of the Gentiles. He was the Christ. And when Pilate, at the suggestion of the principal men amongst us, had condemned him to the cross, those that loved him at the first did not forsake him, for he appeared to them alive again the third day, as the divine prophets had foretold these and 10,000 other wonderful things concerning him. And the tribe of Christians, so named from him, are not extinct at this day. There's some statements in there that do not fit Josephus's template, such as he would have used the phrase the so-called Messiah, he would not call Jesus the Messiah. He would use the so-called Messiah. So there's three things we can do with that passage. For those who are incapable of critical thinking, we can throw it out because some of it's been altered. And that's what Wells does, and that's what this old, uneducated old fart would do. Two, the passage, we could say the passage is entirely authentic and came originally from the pen of Josephus. That's doubtful. The majority of this passage. Number three, the majority of this passage is authentic and contains a Josephian allusion to Christ and his demine, even though it has been subsequently dressed up by a later interpolator. Josephus certainly did not believe Jesus was the Messiah, because elsewhere he says Vespasian fulfilled the Old Testament promise of a world ruler. So that kind of throws that out. In addition, Jerome alters the text, amending it as, he was believed to be Christ. It seems that later Christians also found this to be too rich for even Josephus. Lastly, the description of Christ as a wise man sounds Josephian. To a Christian, Jesus is more than just a wise man. The description of Christians as a tribe is absent from early Christian literature, whereas Josephus uses it to describe the Jewish race as well as other national and communal groups. R.T. France, in his book, The Evidence for Jesus, makes short work of G.A. Wells's objection in the historical evidence for Jesus that the passage, the Testimonium Flavianum, interrupts a proper sequence of that section of Antiquities of the Jews, and he uses Josephus's own writings against him to prove that that's ridiculous. In 1971, an Israeli scholar published a monograph on an Arabic version of Josephus done by Agapius, the 10th century bishop of Hierapolis. The Greek text and the Arabic text were compared. The differences were telling. The Arabic version assumes that Jesus is human. The text refers more to Jesus' righteousness rather than his miraculous deeds. And the resurrection appearance is called a report, and perhaps is inserted before the phrase, he was the Messiah. What we have here is evidence that points to an authentic Josephian allusion to Christ and his crucifixion under Pilate, minus the interpolations. Pines believe that this verse was indeed the closest to the original text of this passage, so I have to conclude why would Old Fart reject that? Well, he doesn't really know what he's talking about. He's copying talking points. So to say that there's no extra biblical evidence for Jesus' existence is ridiculous. And why would you require that? Would you require extra Egyptian evidence for every major person in Egyptian history? No, you wouldn't. You would just say, well, we don't worship them, so we don't need to worry about that question. Yes, you do. And I assume you'll do a video response to this sometime, and that'll give me another opportunity to undercut your nonsense. But don't worry, we're not done yet, folks. We have a little bit left. Now to two of the questions that Old Fart got really angry at, and as you saw from the screenshots, this old man was about ready to blow his top. Cleaning symbiosis. He's got a challenge. Prove the magic in the Bible, as if just saying that is an argument in and of itself. Why do you define it as magic? Are you an empiricist, perhaps? Is that why? Well, anyways, I used the same reasoning against him on cleaning symbiosis. What mutation via natural selection would be responsible for a predator fish suspending his normal habit of eating anything that comes in his mouth? And at the same time, the cleaner fish, which wasn't a cleaner fish before, but decides to become one now, decides to swim into the mouth of a predator and give him a dental cleaning that looks like you need as well. What mutation via natural selection would have caused that? And what mutation, how would that have occurred? It would have had to happen simultaneously. So you never answered that question either. I have a section in there refuting him on, he didn't engage me on objective morality, and it's obvious he believes in objective morality, but he wouldn't answer the question. He has no basis for it. I'm not saying that you have to believe in God to be a good person, and every atheist is an evil person doing outlandish things. No. But they have no foundation for their objective morality. And I found a lot of them, they claim to be relativists, but they're not. A lot of them, they'll try to get around it by proposing pragmatic solutions, and I got a little section on that. And pragmatism is not a good substitute for objective morality, as I give examples to undercut that. And to our last bit of evidence, one last thing. This old guy, and I've got the video link in my piece underneath the video here. Check the link underneath the video. This old man gets all wound up over a private school in Louisiana. Well, first he says, he insinuates that Louisiana is a bunch of hicks, but the problem is, what you don't know, old man, is it wasn't until the 2010 midterm elections that the Louisiana legislature went Republican. Because since Reconstruction, before that time, their state legislature had always been in Democrat control. Oops. And gubernatorial races, it's been kind of back and forth there over the last 30 years, each party winning their fair share of governorships. And most of the time as well, and it wasn't until Jindal became governor, most of the time, all 3 statewide seats, the 2 U.S. senators and governor, or 2 of the 3 were in Democrat control. This is the first time since Reconstruction, when Jindal got elected, that 2 of the 3 were Republican. Him and Senator Vitter. And Senator Landrieu, who just lives off her last name, is the lone Democrat elected on a statewide basis there. So you didn't know that, did you, old fart? And if you look at reading achievement, California has a higher percentage despite spending a lot more, and I just went on over that in a video response to McCain is through X concerning all the money California spends. California spends a lot of money on education, yet they have a higher percentage of all their kids that are below basic in reading comprehension than Louisiana. They're lower than Louisiana. They're doing worse than Louisiana, the state you're calling hicks. Amazing, isn't it? But you didn't know that because you're busy. And how many of your users called you out on that? Probably not one. Not one, because you have nothing but a bunch of yes men. Let's look at Washington, D.C. There's another one we can look at. Washington, in fact, overall, you can just look at nationally, and I've been over this in several of my videos. I have the links to those. We're spending more and more per student. Since 1970, it has skyrocketed. Federal and state money for education has skyrocketed, yet test scores are flat. And old man, where do you get off? Where do you get off forcing my sister and brother-in-law to pay property taxes for a private school or a public school they don't utilize? My nieces go to a private school. I give them money to help them out with that. I'm helping give them money to save for college. It's the family's job. Where do you get off demanding that people who don't utilize a public school be forced to pay for it? You are an authoritarian, despite you will say you aren't, but you are an authoritarian. And I don't favor a voucher system, actually. I favor a tax credit like Arizona has, where it's voluntary and it can go to schools that are secular and schools that aren't secular. But you are an authoritarian, and look at the educational achievement with all that money spent. Not very good. D.C., Washington, D.C., 49% of their 8th graders are below basic in reading. Yet they spend over $29,000 per student. Washington, D.C.'s public school system is a train wreck. California's public school system, with all that extra money, they've been spending more and more each year. Jerry Brown's going to jack it up even more, their educational achievement, and that's where you're from. They do worse than Louisiana. So what do you have to say about that, old man? You didn't even know that, did you? But what he wants to force you to send your kids to a public school, which will then be run by Washington, and they will define truth. They will define what your kids should and shouldn't learn. and parents will have no say. I'm not forcing anyone to do that. But Old Fart wants to because he is an authoritarian. He wants to force you to send your children to a state-approved school because he is an authoritarian. And even if you don't utilize it, he wants to force you, because he's so freedom-loving, to fund a public school that is ineffective with your tax dollars. And D.C. is far worse than Louisiana, yet you're ripping Louisiana. What you ought to be doing, old man, is ripping the D.C. public school system for spending all that money and wasting it, because it's all about power. So no, dummy. My nieces, who are going to attend private schools, are already light years ahead of you, old man. So that's it for now. There will be more responses later. That should keep you busy. Old Fart, I would like to thank publicly my friend Athena's Conquest for helping set you up, because I knew I'd be able to egg you into doing a video response. And I think you'll probably do another one as well. And I eagerly wait for it. Then I get a chance to intellectually abuse you again, old man. Have a nice day.